It was a rainy Tuesday morning in Abuja, the kind of rain that didn't pour in anger, but whispered like sorrow. It tapped against car roofs, trickled down rusted signboards, and soaked the red earth until the streets turned to slow rivers. Gray clouds sagged over the city like heavy blankets. Winds howled softly through narrow alleys. Vendors huddled under makeshift umbrellas, their goods wrapped in plastic. People rushed by in faded coats and broken umbrellas, not out of urgency, but habit. Nobody looked up. Nobody paused. In Abuja, rain or not, life must move. But under a leaking zinc shelter near Wu's Market, forgotten by the city's rhythm, a woman sat still. So still, you'd think she was carved into the concrete. Her name was Elena. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her skin like second sorrow, her feet bare, her wrapper dirty. Rainwater slid from the rusted zinc roof and dripped beside her like a ticking clock. Tied to her back, wrapped in a thin, faded Ankara cloth that had once been colorful, was her baby, David, 6 months old, burning with fever. His head rested against her shoulder, his breath shallow. Every few seconds, he let out a weak cry, a sound that pierced the heart, like a broken bird too tired to fly. Elena gently rocked her body, more out of instinct than strength. Her arms ached, her eyelids were heavy. But she wouldn't sleep, not here, not while David burned up like a candle with no wax left. She whispered to him, soft, desperate things. "Stay with me, my son. Just a little more. Mommy's here, you hear?" But David didn't respond. Her stomach growled, loud enough to be heard. But she ignored it. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. She didn't care anymore. All that mattered now was the heat rising from David's small body and the fact that her money, all of it, was gone. Cars honked in the distance, motorcycles splashed past, flinging muddy water onto her legs. Still, she didn't flinch. The world had stopped noticing her a long time ago. A teenage boy walked past and stared for a moment, then shook his head. "Another one," he muttered. "They just multiply every day." Elena didn't even look up. She had heard worse. Sometimes they said she was faking. Sometimes they said she borrowed the baby to beg. Sometimes they said nothing at all, which hurt even more. But today was different, because David's breathing had changed. His body was hotter than usual, and deep inside Elena's heart, a fear was growing. A fear that this might be the day she watches her child slip away, not in a hospital, not in a warm bed, but under a zinc roof, soaked and invisible. Elena hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her last real meal was a cold, leftover wrap of akara, shared with 2 other women beneath a footbridge. It hadn't filled her stomach. It had only reminded her how long hunger can stretch before the body starts giving up. David, her baby, hadn't tasted milk in nearly 30 hours. His lips were dry, his cry had lost its voice. It had become a soft wheeze, the kind that terrifies mothers the most. Not loud enough to attract help, not quiet enough to mean he's sleeping, just weakening. Elena didn't shout, didn't chase cars, didn't run to windows at red lights like others did. She didn't have the strength anymore, and even if she did, there was something in her that refused to beg with noise. Her silence wasn't pride, it was exhaustion, so she just sat, soaked, cold, still. Her clothes clung to her like wet paper. Raindrops ran down her face and mixed with the tears she no longer had energy to wipe. The wrapper around David was damp and thin, barely a barrier against the wind. She pressed him closer, trying to transfer warmth from a body that had none left. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Hold on, my son, just a little more." It wasn't even a promise. It was a prayer she repeated not for David, but for herself. People walked past like clock hands, constant, mechanical, unfeeling. Some glanced with pity, others looked away like shame was contagious. They saw the baby, the mother, the wet ground, and in their minds, it was just another sad Abuja morning. A woman in a blue jeal slowed her steps. She fumbled in her purse and dropped a crumpled 50 naira note on the floor, didn't speak, didn't make eye contact, just walked on like tossing crumbs to a bird. Moments later, a tall man in a suit passed by. He didn't stop, but he shook his head and muttered under his breath, loud enough for Elena to hear, "Another actress. They even rent babies now to pull heartstrings." Elena heard him. Of course she did. But she didn't flinch. She had run out of reactions weeks ago. Only her eyes moved, blinking once, twice, then turning back to the small, hot body pressed to her chest. David let out a faint cry. A cry that sounded more like a sigh, and that was when something in her began to crack. Because she knew, if nothing happened today, if no help came today, she might lose him, and the world would keep walking. That morning, a black Mercedes G-Wagon crept to a slow stop across the street from Wu's market. Its engine purred softly beneath the rain, barely louder than the world outside. Inside the vehicle sat Mr. Yemi Olanrewaju, suit sharp, beard trimmed, presence commanding, one of Nigeria's most powerful tech CEOs, a man used to speed, numbers, and calculated risk. This morning, he was headed for the biggest pitch of his year, a multi-million-dollar partnership with 2 European investors flying in just to meet him. His assistant had called twice already. Then a text. "Sir, we need to leave. They're already at the Hilton." But Yemi didn't reply. His attention wasn't on the deal. It was across the street. Through the foggy glass of the window, he saw her, a woman, sitting still in the rain, baby tied to her back, soaked, small, unmoving, but something about her. He leaned forward. She wasn't shouting, wasn't chasing cars, wasn't holding a plastic bowl or knocking on windows. She just sat, bent, silent. He watched the way she clutched the baby, like she was protecting the last thing in her life that hadn't been taken. His hand moved slowly to the window switch. He rolled it down halfway. The sound of the outside world rushed in, rain falling, tires hissing. And then he heard it, the baby's cry. Not a scream, not a tantrum, but a weak, tired whimper, like the sound of a child too sick to cry louder. That sound didn't just reach Yemi's ears. It stabbed his chest. He blinked. Once, twice. Memories. A woman in the rain, holding a baby wrapped in faded cloth. Crouched outside a church in Agege, his mother. It had been over 3 decades. But the picture, the cold, the silence, the look in her eyes, had never left him. His jaw tightened. "Stop the car," he said quietly. "Sir?" The driver glanced through the mirror. "Park. Now." There was hesitation. A billionaire in a suit stepping into the market slum during rainfall didn't exactly make sense, but the driver didn't argue. He pulled to the side. Yemi opened the door. Rain met him instantly. Soft, cold needles against his face. His polished shoes splashed into muddy water, soaking his hemline. Still? He walked, one step after the other, eyes locked on her. Elena didn't see him at first. She was still whispering to David, trying to calm the shivering baby with promises her heart couldn't back. Then, a shadow, a tall figure, blocking the rain. She looked up, her heart skipped. She blinked hard. Was this a hallucination? Number that face. She'd seen it on a billboard before. Or was it a TV ad? He looked expensive, but not arrogant. His eyes. They were serious, but warm. Almost sad. He knelt beside her, not minding the water pooling beneath his knees. "What's your name?" he asked, voice low but steady. "Elena," she said, barely audible. He looked at the baby, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong with him?" "He has fever," she whispered. "No medicine, no milk." Her voice cracked on the last word. Yemi turned slightly, called back toward the car. "Call doctor. Philip. Tell him we're bringing in a baby. Fever, possible dehydration. Urgent." The driver nodded and pulled out his phone. Elena blinked up at him, unsure if she'd heard right. "Sir, why are you doing this?" Yemi paused. He didn't want to say too much. Didn't want to make it about himself, but the truth slipped out, soft and sharp. "You remind me of someone." He glanced at the baby again. "My mother. When I was a baby, we were just like this. No money, no shelter, only her, and rain." His eyes met hers. "I didn't forget where I came from, and I can't walk away from this." Elena couldn't speak. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her mind was moving, but her body had gone still, frozen not by the rain anymore, but by disbelief. He reached out his hand, steady and sure, and helped her into the car. She hesitated at first, not because she didn't want help, but because her world had never made room for miracles. But this moment felt different. She stepped in. Inside was warmth, soft leather seats, no puddles, no noise, just quiet hums from the engine and the faint smell of aftershave, cashmere, and money. She sat stiffly, like someone who had entered a palace uninvited. Her wrapper dripped onto the floor mat. She didn't want to touch anything. She didn't belong here. She knew it. Still, she pulled David closer, pressing his hot forehead against her shoulder, listening to his slow breathing. Yemi sat beside her, silent, not offering comfort with words, but with presence. It was enough. The car turned off the main road, speeding quietly toward a part of the city she'd never entered before, a neighborhood with street names she only heard on the radio. Clean signs, tall gates, security men in crisp uniforms. They arrived at a sleek, glass-walled building, Solace Private Medical Center. Before the driver could stop, the clinic doors opened. 2 nurses and a doctor came rushing out, as if they had been waiting. Yemi stepped out first. "Here," he said to them. "The baby. Fever. Possible dehydration." Elena stepped out, eyes wide. She tried to explain. Tried to speak. I didn't mean to." Yemi placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't need to explain. You don't need to worry. They'll take care of him now." The nurses reached out. Elena hesitated again. Mother's instinct. She didn't want to let David go, but then she looked into the nurse's eyes and saw no judgment, only care. She nodded slowly and let go. They carried him in gently. She followed. Inside, she sat on a padded chair in the waiting room. Everything was white, clean, quiet, too quiet. Her heart beat like a ticking bomb. Every few seconds, her mind flashed terrifying images. David convulsing, David fading, David leaving. She rocked back and forth, fingers clasped tight in her lap. She didn't speak, didn't blink much, didn't cry. She just waited, like a woman caught between hope and heartbreak. Then, hours later, the doctor stepped into the room, pulling off his gloves. There was a smile on his face. "Are you the mother?" Elena stood immediately. Her knees wobbled. "Yes," she whispered. The doctor nodded kindly. "He's stable now. It was dehydration and fever, but we've handled it. He's resting. He'll be fine." Elena's legs gave way. She dropped to the chair, then covered her face, and for the first time in what felt like years, she cried. Not the quiet, careful tears of the street, but real body-shaking sobs, tears of relief, tears of survival, tears of finally being heard. The doctor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You can go see him soon," he said softly. "He's strong, like you." That night, Yemi booked her a hotel room not far from the clinic. A modest but beautiful place, clean, safe, warm, a fresh towel, hot food, a blanket that smelled like lavender, a baby cot brought in just for David. Elena stood in the middle of the room holding her child, now cooler, breathing easier, and just stared. She looked at the bed, at the meal tray, at the quiet TV flickering gently in the background, and she asked aloud, "God, is this real?" She touched her forehead, then David's, then her cheek, as if to confirm she hadn't died and gone somewhere else. That night she couldn't sleep, even after feeding David, even after bathing. She sat by the window, looking out at the lights in the distance. "God, thank you," she whispered again and again, but part of her still didn't believe it was over, because for people like her, help never came and stayed. But what she didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin beige curtains of the hotel room. It wasn't raining anymore. The city outside buzzed with its usual energy, cars honking, buses groaning, vendors calling. But inside Elena's room, there was silence. A calm she hadn't felt in years. David was fast asleep in the crib the hotel staff had provided. His skin was no longer hot. His lips looked fuller, his breathing soft and steady. Elena stood by the window, still in the same clothes the staff had washed and returned. She didn't have much, but today she had peace, and she didn't know what to do with it. Then, a gentle knock on the door. She turned, opened it slowly. Yemi stood there, holding a brown envelope in one hand and a quiet smile on his face. "Good morning," he said. She stepped aside to let him in. He walked in, looked around briefly, then handed her the envelope. "What's this?" Elena asked, brows furrowed. "Open it," he replied. She hesitated, then slowly peeled back the flap. Inside were several documents, neatly arranged and stamped. "A lease," Yemi explained, "for a shop space, in Garki. Good foot traffic, secure." Elena's hands trembled as she flipped through the papers. Then she saw something else inside. A bank slip. 1 million naira. Her fingers froze. Her eyes darted up. "Sir," she whispered, I don't understand." "I did my homework," Yemi said gently. "You were once a tailor, in Nyanya." Elena nodded slowly, stunned. "Yes, I used to sew uniforms, Sunday dresses, even wedding gowns sometimes." Her voice cracked. "I lost everything in a fire last year. It was overnight. My shop, my machine, my fabrics, gone. Just like that." She looked away, as if ashamed to admit how much it still hurt. Yemi stepped closer. "Not anymore." She turned back to him. "I've also arranged for a nanny, someone to help you with David while you recover your strength. And I'm assigning a trainer. She's a retired fashion teacher. She'll brush you up on everything. You'll be back in control. This time, stronger. This time, no fire will take what's yours." Elena stood frozen. She clutched the envelope to her chest like it was oxygen. Then, her knees buckled beneath her. She dropped to the floor sobbing, not from weakness, but from the weight of hope too heavy to carry standing. Yemi stepped forward quickly, alarmed, but she was already on her knees, weeping. "Thank you, sir," she said through tears. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Yemi gently knelt in front of her and held her arms. "No," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You're not a beggar. You're a mother who didn't give up. I just showed up when God said it was time." She looked into his eyes, still sobbing, but in her expression, something had changed. She wasn't just grateful. She was beginning to believe again, believe that she wasn't invisible, believe that her story still had pages left, believe that her son David would grow up seeing a version of his mother that wasn't broken, but rebuilt. A few months later, the rainy season had ended. In Guaranpa, the streets were now golden with dust and light. Children played by roadside kiosks, music floated from barbershops, and the scent of roasted corn lingered in the afternoon air. And on a quiet corner, just opposite a busy junction, a new boutique had opened. Small, but elegant. Fresh white paint, glass doors, and above it, a hand-carved wooden sign that read, "Stitch of Grace by Elena." It didn't just carry her name. It carried her story. Inside, sunlight spilled through wide windows onto neatly arranged mannequins dressed in vibrant fabrics. Rows of Ankara, lace, and polished cotton lined the walls like art. On one side, a sewing machine hummed softly as a young apprentice practiced her stitching. and behind the counter, standing tall in a sky-blue dress of her own design, was Elena. Her eyes were clear, her hair neatly packed. Her hands, once calloused from the streets, now moved with purpose. Strapped gently to her back, wrapped in fresh cotton, was little David. His cheeks were full, his skin glowed. He played with the beads on her necklace, gurgling softly. Customers walked in and out. Some asked for fittings, others came just to see the woman who made it from nothing. Elena greeted each one with grace, no longer from survival, but from strength. Her voice was calm, her smile steady. Her life had changed, not because of chance, not because of charity, but because one man decided to stop the car, one man chose to see her when the world walked past. And she, instead of crumbling, rose. She didn't forget. Every evening before locking up, she whispered a prayer, not for more money, but for the strength to never become the kind of person who drives past someone like she used to be, because she knew one moment of kindness can rewrite a lifetime of suffering. And now, every stitch she made carried that truth, a thread of grace woven into second chances. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of kindness to rewrite someone's entire story. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe, because just like Elena, someone out there is praying for a stranger to show up, and that stranger might just be you.